the name of the one holy and undivided Trinity.
Amen.
Well, I bring you greetings from Toledo, Ohio. How many people have been to Toledo, Ohio? Oh, I see a few hands. I had never been to Toledo, Ohio. I got to get there. My travel plans took me first to Detroit, where I picked up a car, and then I drove to Toledo. Unknown territory. And I wondered, can God be in this place? Unfortunately, yes. And I was at the Lombard Mennonite training program for conflict resolution mediation training. And Jan asked me, so are you now a trained mediator? And I said, no. But I've been introduced to how one might be so trained, and also the sort of underpinnings of the Mennonite process, which is based on Matthew 18. They look to Matthew 18, and all of you remember Matthew 18 by verse. I don't, except I can tell you it's a process that is included in the Gospel of Matthew for settling differences in the church. And it has to do with beginning by talking directly to one another, and then if you need a third party, involve that, and then if you need to bring it before the council of the church, then you do that. And so they have taken that gospel structure and tradition, and they've built on that series of interventions that and have trained mediators to operate in those interventions. So in terms of Pentecost, it really was being immersed in a whole different culture, because I was one of two Episcopalians, and there were 36 of us there. So I was one of two Episcopalians, many Lutherans, many Presbyterians, Methodists, Mennonites. It was really a very different series of voices in terms of Pentecost, many different voices, and yet through it all, meeting them, listening to them, I heard the one voice of the one holy and undivided Trinity. And we sang songs that I'd never heard before, that I couldn't sing for you now. And now today, your green hymnal, this green hymnal, has us singing songs that I don't know about you, I've never sung before. That one we sang as an opening was brand new to me. Anybody else here sing that before? It was great. I was like, what are we doing? But it was wonderful. Do all of you know that we have liturgy czars? You know? We have liturgy czars, rulers of the liturgy, and it's Susan Stiles and Nancy Willis. And they get together with Peg Rostrup, and every week the liturgy is revised and refined, and by season it's a whole new liturgy. So we have one now being flight tested for Pentecost, and it seems to me, having done it at 8 o'clock, this is a great liturgy. And so that leads me to doing a little bit of a survey with you all. I'm going to ask you to do it all at once. So think for a minute. What are the ministries, the different expressions of ministry at St. Augustine's? Now just sort of get one in your mind that you're going to name out loud with as much volume as you wish to offer it. Are you ready, Roy? So think of one ministry that you know you hold hands on, you hold your hands to, that you want to give voice to. 3, 2, 1. Choir.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do it again. 3, 2, 1.
Media friend.
Now, I'm going to challenge you, in spite of the cacophony of that, did you hear the wonderful works of God being proclaimed?
Yeah.
Near you and around you? I mean, that's a little bit of the Pentecost experience, because they were hearing in many different voices, and yet they were hearing in things in a voice that they could hear too, in spite of the cacophony. They were hearing the wonderful works of God being proclaimed. And I put it to you that St. Augustine's, just by the Spirit of God, alive in this place, not because of any willfulness of our own, but just by yielding to the Spirit. There are a great many of expressions of God's power and beauty and love and glory being expressed through St. A's. And some of those gifts are internal to us. They're things that have to do with this building and with our liturgy and with, you named it, all the different things that happen here, the administration, all the things that keep this thing going. And then many of them are outside of our boundaries, or the ways in which we call people into our boundaries. It's like how many different ways the Spirit moves through this place to both affirm and build up the people who gather within it, but also to call out to the world and bring others in, to be nurtured and fed, and then to reach out, whether they come to us or not, to feed and to help and to sustain people. And it happens in this natural way. Even something like, you'll hear about announcements today, like the, what is it called, flea market? Yard sale. Yard sale. All right. There's so many different ways in which we express. But the yard sale is an expression of God's life among us, because people come to us in the midst of the yard sale, and they get to touch into our life. And they sense the joy and the industry that's alive among us. And those who work in the yard sale build up their relationship one with another. And the church also benefits from it financially. So there are many different expressions, and there's no way of saying that they only serve one purpose. There are ways in which this church, just being the church, just like any other church, is reaching and touching lives in ways that are never really made conscious, but they're being nurtured all the same. But there are ways that we are conscious of it, ways that we can name. You named them. And it's something about which Pentecost, it's to that the Pentecost points. It's that God gave God's Spirit so that all of us could be released and freed to move into the world with the grace and the power and the energy that's inherent to us as individuals made by God. And our gifts are as varied as we're varied. They're as varied as the different ways that your body has different parts that move and operate both on the surface and below it, that sustain and support the body. So you, and you, and you, all offer different ways in which the body of Christ shows itself alive in the world and alive in this place. And so Pentecost is all about that. And we do on Pentecost sometimes bring people who speak in a different voice to read the Gospels. For instance, to read the Gospel in Spanish or in Portuguese or in Russian or any other language that we probably wouldn't necessarily all of us understand, but it's to sort of bring that cacophony forward to sort of say, wow, even though I don't understand exactly what that person's ministry is all about, I can sense that something beautiful is happening there and that God is inspiring that. And so we raised up this morning a new liturgy, new music. We support Jane as she tries to read a very difficult part of the Acts. And we just sort of embrace that God, and by God's nurturing and power, is lifting up His the glorious self of God is being made manifest among us through the many different ways in which it touches into our lives. So thanks be to God for Pentecost, which is the birth of our church, the birth of all churches. More than our 60th anniversary coming up in September, this is the day that really celebrates the birth of the church. That God, by God's power, made it a gift to the world. It isn't of our doing, but it's the grace of God that enlivens us to serve in God's name in the world in the many, many ways that we named earlier in this sermon. So, thanks be to God. Amen.
Amen.